All right, welcome everyone. Can everyone see my screen? Um, and can everyone can hear me just fine as well?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sounds great. Well, welcome to our session, Available Programs and Incentives for Commercial Real Estate Facilities. We've been doing this every year for I don't know how many years now, but it's always a wonderful session, and we get some really, really great programs out there and a lot of information. So we're going to start this session with the COG. And then we're going to go into Oncor, and then we're going to end with questions from the group or any other comments that you may have for the speakers or for myself. We are recording this session, so it's going to be on our YouTube channel as well if you need to refer back to it. And so why don't we go ahead and get started here? I'm going to ask when we do start each of the presentations that the speakers introduce themselves and kind of give just a brief overview of what they do for the organization. So we're going to get started, and I think Corinne is going to get us started from the COG.
Yes, yeah. Well, hi everyone. Good morning. My name is Corinne Buckley. I'm a planner with the North Central Texas Council of Governments. I work in our Environment and Development Department. I've been here for about 2 years. I work on a pretty wide range of programs related to energy management. I work on our Regional Integration of Sustainability Efforts Coalition, which is more of a broader sustainability group. And then I just recently wrapped up work on our Regional Air Quality Improvement Plan. But I'm here today with my colleague Savannah Nance. And we're going to be sharing with you programs and incentives for commercial real estate facilities. If you're not familiar with the COG, we're a voluntary association of by and for local governments. So we're one of 24 COGs in the state, and we cover the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex and the surrounding counties. Next slide, please. So just to give you all an overview of kind of what I'm going to talk through, or what we're going to talk through, these are the programs and incentives we'll be covering. I'll point this out, but the big thing with the tax credits is those have been impacted by the One Big Beautiful Bill. So that's impacted how much time you have to apply for the tax credits. But I'll get into a bit more detail on those deadlines when I cover those. I'll then talk about the Clean Energy Fund of Texas before handing it over to Savannah, and she'll cover the Texas Backup Power Package and vehicle and equipment replacements. And I'll also say the majority of these are not COG programs. These are resources that we can share with you, but I would also encourage you to visit the program websites to learn more in a bit more detail. And I've linked those here. We've also linked those throughout the slides as well for your convenience. Next slide, please. So kicking off with the tax credits, the first one I'll talk about is the energy efficient commercial buildings tax deduction. So this is a deduction that's available to building owners who place in service energy efficient commercial building property, EECBP, or energy efficient building retrofit property, EEBRP. It's also available to the designers of energy efficient commercial building property and energy efficient building retrofit property that's installed in buildings owned by specific tax exempt entities. And so for the energy efficient commercial building property, it's a bit more stringent. The savings need to be measured against ASHRAE standards. And that's going to depend on when construction began. So if construction began on or after January 1st, 2023, and the energy efficient properties in service on or after January 1st, 2027, then the most recent ASHRAE standard 90.1 for 2019 applies. But if construction began before 2023 or it's placed in service before 2027, then the older version of 2007, this 2007 standard is what's going to apply. For the building retrofit property, the qualified buildings just need to be located in the U.S. And placed in service not less than 5 years before the establishment of a qualified retrofit plan. So basically, the building needs to be more than 5 years old and before the retrofit plan was put in place, right? So this is more for existing buildings, whereas the commercial, the CBP is going to be for new builds. And so for both of these, the retrofits that the tax credits can cover are going to be interior lighting systems, heating, cooling, ventilation, and hot water systems, or updates to the building envelope. Next slide, please. And so looking at the actual deduction amount itself, for property that's placed in service 2023 and later, the deduction is going to be one of two things. It's either going to be the cost of the installed property or a dollar figure that's determined by the square footage of the building and the calculated energy savings. And so it'll be the lesser of those. Two is the deduction that you can claim. For the dollar figure, that's going to be 50 cents per square foot for a building with 25% energy savings. And then you can add an additional 2 cents for every square foot above that percentage, up to a total of $1 per square foot for 50% energy savings. If a property was placed in service before January 1st, 2023, that deduction's capped at 180 per square foot for buildings with 50% energy savings, and that's been indexed for inflation. There's also additional partial deductions that are available for those older properties. Also, for properties placed in service more recently, 2023 or later, there's the opportunity to claim a tax deduction based on wages. So if the local prevailing wages are paid and apprenticeship requirements are met, then an increased maximum deduction applies. And so that maximum amount increases to an amount approximately 5 times the base savings per square foot amount. So you can really max out on that tax credit if you're able to make that claim based on the wages as well. But the most important thing I'll point out here is that the tax credit will only apply to construction that's beginning through January 30th of this year. That is a change made from the One Big Beautiful Bill. It doesn't specify how long after that date that you can apply for this credit, even if the construction has started before that date. And so because there's been a lot of change within the new administration, I would say if this is something that you think that your building could qualify for, it would definitely be worth applying sooner rather than later to make sure that you can tap in on that tax deduction. Next slide, please. The other credit I'll cover is the Clean Energy Investment Tax Credit. So this was created to replace the previous Energy Investment Tax Credit. That one was phased out at the end of 2024. So this new Clean Energy Investment Tax Credit, it applies to systems placed in service on or after January 1st of 2025. Under the previous tax credit, it was more specific on what technology you could claim the credit on, but this current version is a emissions-based incentive, and so it's neutral and flexible, and you can use it across various energy technologies.
What did I do?
So any generation facilities and energy storage systems that have an anticipated greenhouse gas emissions rate of 0 can qualify for this credit. The base amount for that credit is going to be 6% of the qualified investment, with additional increases able to be earned by meeting prevailing wages and registered apprenticeship requirements, meeting certain domestic requirements for the materials that are used, and then for the project being located in an energy community. That's something that you can look up on the tax credit website. And so there is a potential for a credit of up to 50% if you maxed out on all of the additional credit increases. Next slide, please. So this one is also impacted by the One Big Beautiful Bill, but the extent of the impacts will depend on whether the technology is identified as a solar and wind energy system. So if it is a solar and wind energy system, they must be in place by December 31st of 2027, or construction must have commenced by July 4th of this year. It's also, if any material assistance from a prohibited foreign entity was utilized, then the tax credit expired at the end of last year, so that would no longer be applicable. They have a really long definition of what a prohibited foreign entity is, so I would encourage you that link to the specific part of the bill will give you that information if that's something that you think might apply to you. Now the technology Oh, next slide, please. If the technology is not wind or solar, such as combined heat and power, energy storage, hydropower, and geothermal, then that tax credit is instead being gradually rolled out. So you have a bit more time to claim that credit. So projects that commence construction now through 2033 are still able to claim up to 100% of that available credit. In 2034, that rolls back to 75% of the available credit, then to 50% in 2035, and that is the last year which the credit can be claimed. There's a bit more flexibility and timeline for that, for those types of technologies. Next slide, please. And then the final resource I'll share is the Clean Energy Fund of Texas. This is a Texas-based nonprofit that serves as the first green bank in Texas, and they offer multiple loan opportunities for financing clean energy and energy improvement projects. So I'll just highlight two of their loans that are going to be most relevance to commercial properties. The first is the Navigator Pre-Development Loan, and that's financing that covers planning costs for energy saving projects with the goal of savings on long-term facility operations costs. And then the second is the Clean Building Loan, which supports upgrades that boost energy and water efficiency and includes the conducting of an energy audit. These do have a bit of a narrower scope and more requirements that you need to meet to be able to qualify for them. So they might not be for everyone, but I would say they're worth looking into if you think you do have a project that might fit into the scope of one of these loans. And with that, I'll hand it over to Savannah to talk about the Texas Backup Power Package and vehicle and equipment replacements.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Savannah Nance. I'm a planner in our transportation department at the North Central Texas Council of Governments. I'm on our alternative fuels and energy team, so we really focus on all things related to, you can guess, alternative fuel vehicles and equipment. So propane, natural gas, electric, hydrogen, all of that. But I also work on the team that oversees our initiatives that we really collaborate with our E&D related to energy efficiency and renewable energy efforts. So I'm going to be sharing some information about one new funding opportunity that is for critical facilities, and then a little bit of information about vehicles, in case any of you also have some vehicles that you're interested in getting funding for. So to start us off, there is a new program called the Texas Backup Power Packages, or TBPP. It is a difficult acronym to say. So this was only recently authorized in Texas statute through the Texas Energy Fund, or the TEF, which is almost $10 billion in funding for various programs to make our grid more resilient. This was one of the things that came out of post-Winter Storm Uri in 2021, and trying to make sure that moving forward, everyone is safer. So this program specifically has 1.8 billion of that 10 billion available for it. And that is specifically to provide funding for multi-day, so 48 hours, backup power systems to vital community facilities and services. And whenever you first hear that, you might think, well, that sounds like maybe a municipality, but it actually includes corporations, county districts, or utilities. So really anyone that owns a critical facility that is on this list that's right in front of us are potentially eligible for this opportunity. It's not actually open yet, this program. I'll talk about a little bit of a schedule later on, but they're just starting to release rulemaking on it. So they're just starting to allow for comments about what they're thinking. So we wanted to get this information to you early, so that way if people have comments or they can start preparing their projects. So some of the critical facilities are listed, but hospitals, medical facilities, community heating or cooling stations, if gas stations or that are along evacuation routes or areas of limited supply are something that's eligible. So think like if you're a rural area and the only grocery store that you have is actually your gas station, that would be something that is eligible. Communication facilities or community gathering places. So there's a pretty long list of eligible facilities. So we definitely encourage you guys to take a look, see if maybe your entity meets any of those requirements. Next slide. So the TBPP program is going to provide funding for grants and loans. If you're getting a grant, you're limited for $500 per kilowatt for a maximum of 1.25 million per site. Per site means for each critical facility. So if you are somebody that has multiple critical facilities, currently based on the rulemaking, you can ask for funding for multiple sites, but you are limited to 1.25 million for each site. If you hit the grant max, you are allowed to ask for a loan that could potentially be forgivable after 5 years if you meet the performance expectations, with eligible costs listed right there, but it can include design, installation, the actual procurement of the equipment, and then also any operating costs. As a reminder, this is all like draft right now because the program has not been finalized, but this is based off the latest draft that's available. Next slide. So I mentioned earlier that the backup power system, they're really meant to be these modular systems that are similar in how they are made for each individual facility to try to streamline the deployment of them. So each one is supposed to have a natural gas or propane generator, solar, and battery storage. Battery storage from electric vehicles is potentially eligible to be considered your battery storage, but it can also just be a stationary battery storage. And then those three elements have to work together to be able to provide 48 hours of power to that critical facility in the event of a grid outage, which hopefully our grid never goes out, but if it does, these are critical facilities that we need to make sure are powered for several days. I mentioned earlier that there is a cap on how much funding. That cap also applies to how big of a generating system. So you can't have more than 2.5 megawatts of load per facility. So I mentioned earlier that right now it is just a draft rulemaking. Unfortunately, sorry about this. The draft rulemaking actually is going to be closing tomorrow. If you are somebody that has really strong opinions on this, or you think your entity might be eligible and you want to give some feedback, the link is on the slide. So it's at interchangepuc.texas.gov. And then you'll need to search that control number and that item number. And then you can give comments by tomorrow. They might open up another round of rulemaking comments. We don't actually know yet. If they do, of course, you could provide those comments. But if you think your entity might be eligible and you're really interested, I would encourage you to try to find a little bit of time today to put in your comments if you can. You can also read through the full draft rulemaking. We just hit on the high levels. There's a lot more detail in the draft rulemaking. And then if you want to learn more, we actually had a webinar on the 27th, so 2 days ago. And it's recorded and already on the website. And we have a much longer slide deck than this with a lot more information. We had speakers and we had a pretty lengthy Q&A with lots of questions from folks. And then we also have the website where you can go and learn more. Next slide. All right, so going into alternative fuels, so maybe pivoting a little bit from the commercial facility side of things. If you're not aware, Texas has been pretty successful in alternative fuel adoption. We typically rank third in the United States for states in total alternative fuel vehicle adoption, and we are only behind California and Florida, typically is where it goes. So you can see in the chart on the left-hand side that growth from 2021 to 2025, we recently broke 1 million alternative fuel vehicles based on TxDOT's report. And the majority of those alternative fuel vehicles are actually battery electric or hybrid electric and gas. So the chart that's on the bottom, that's what that shows is the ratio of alternative fuel vehicles, and it's basically all electric. There is like a tiny bit of hydrogen that is so small that you can barely even see it in FY25. Those are 12 light-duty hydrogen vehicles that are registered in Austin for their UT Austin rideshare program, which is super cool. But yeah, there's been a lot of development in both the smaller vehicles, so light duty vehicles, but also larger vehicles. So like some semis, refuse trucks, your class 6 and 7. We actually have a little over 200 of them operating in Texas right now. So it's been growing and it's continuing to grow. Next slide. And to that point, there is also still funding available for battery electric vehicles. So one of the funding programs that is available is the North Central Texas Council of Governments has 58.6 million for class 6 and 7, what's called a vocational vehicle. So that's really your working trucks. Working trucks are things like refuse trucks, transit buses, which may not apply to you guys, but it also can include things like box trucks, step vans, and then we also just have a very generic other category. So any kind of other working truck that is in your class 6 and 7 area. So this funding is from the Environmental Protection Agency. So we have certain restrictions about how it can be spent. The requirement is that it has to be spent to replace any emitting vehicle. So gasoline, diesel, propane, natural gas with a zero emission version. So battery electric or hydrogen fuel cell. If you are interested, or if you have any friends that you think might be interested, this is available to public and private entities that are operating in Dallas-Fort Worth. And the deadline for our first round is February 13th. So if somebody's interested, please pass along or take a look at our website. It's right there on the website. So it's the nctcog.org/ntxciv. Next slide. So in addition to that funding, there's also funding through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality through their TERP programs, which stands for Texas Emissions Reduction Plan. They have 10 different programs. They have quite a bit, or actually it's almost a dozen now. And each one of them have various things that they can fund. So I listed on the left-hand side the types of items that those funding programs can do. And then on the right-hand side, I have the funding programs that apply to that. So whatever your entity has, I would encourage you to take a look at the associated program. We have the expected schedule for those in the future. And then if you're somebody that is interested in storage or infrastructure, there are, meaning like battery storage, there are specific funding programs for that. So that is the New Technology Implementation Grant, which is expected to open in May. And then for the infrastructure side, there's the Alternative Fueling Facilities Program, which is not opening until 2027, but it can provide funding for alternative fuel refueling infrastructure. Next slide. In addition to those, I just wanted to flag that there is also I'm going to go to the second one on the list first, a tax credit that was also changed by the Big Beautiful Bill, which is the Alternative Fuel Vehicle Refueling Tax Credit. So it is still available, but they have shortened the deadline for it, where now you only have until June 30th, 2026 to claim that tax credit. So if your entity has recently built some alternative fuel infrastructure and you want to see if it qualifies, take a look. Or if you're going to be building something between now and June 30th, definitely take a look. So as many folks can take advantage of that before the deadline as possible. And then the North Central Texas Council of Governments also has a little bit of money through the North Texas Diesel Emissions Reduction Project that can be used for the replacement of any heavy-duty vehicles or equipment, or the installation of idle reduction technologies. And the deadline for that is March 13th. There's not as much fun, there's not a ton of funding left in that program, so it's probably going to be the last time that is available. It was originally only 1.3 million, and most of that has already been claimed. Next slide. And then moving away from funding, if none of these funding programs apply to you, but maybe you still want to get involved in the work that the Council of Governments is doing, I did want to flag a few things that your entity might be interested in. First of all is Air North Texas. So if you are concerned about our local air quality, our communications team in the transportation department has a great program called Air North Texas that it can share notifications about when poor air quality is happening, and also share some tips about what little things that you can do or your organization can do to help improve air quality. So definitely encourage everyone to check that out. Next slide. And then the final thing is try parking it. So if you are someone that is passionate about alternative commuting, whether it is walking, biking, maybe you're carpooling to work, working remotely, even things like not going out to lunch and bringing your lunch to work even qualifies because that is a trip that is reduced. The Try Parking It program is for tracking that. And then actually through partnerships with local businesses, you can get discounts on like food or get rewards or things like that. So it's a great program. It's super easy to use. It's just an app that you can download onto your phone, and then you can track your alternative commutes and get money for it, which is great. Next slide. Here is our links. So if you're interested in learning more about alternative fuels or the renewable energy types work, our Clean Cities webpage is there. And then our environment and development departments is there. Then we also have some email lists where if you want to stay up to date about some of the work that we're doing, you can sign up for those there. Next slide. And more websites if you are interested in any of those, including Conserve More Texas, which is solely focused on energy efficiency. Go Solar, which has resources for any type of entity or the general public to go and adopt solar. Also another webpage on energy management efficiency, and we have a specific mailing list on energy efficiency items as well. Next slide. All right, Oncor.
Well, before we get started, thank you, Corinne. Thank you, Savannah. You know, your slide 12, I was wondering from that slide 12, if you could put the information for adding any additional comments or thoughts. I know the expiration is today or tomorrow. So if you could put that link in there into the chat, that would be great.
Yes.
And then also you had mentioned that you had done more of an extensive like session about this or information session. Do you have that, the link to that video or that presentation that you can also put into the chat just in case if somebody wants to learn more about it before making any comments for that program. So if you could do that, I'd really appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Perfect. And now I'm going to welcome Oncor. Matt, I think you're going to get us started here.
Yeah, hi. My name is Matt Taylor. I'm a senior program manager for several programs at Oncor. Specifically today, I'm going to be speaking about our commercial standard offer program and also our strategic energy management program, which we are implementing through Leidos. And James Costin is on as well, and he'll be speaking about that at the end of after I get done with the commercial standard offer program. Next slide. So year in review. We averaged 27 kW per project last year, 3.7 million in incentives paid, averaged 169,000 kWh per project, and we had almost 200 projects submitted to us. Most of our projects are lighting retrofits, lighting new construction, or HVAC retrofits or new construction. We do have a litany of other offers and we can incentivize, like pumps, motors, VFDs, and those are all available on our incentive calculator, which there'll be a link here in a few minutes. I'll show you that. Next slide. New for this year, we have lodging occupancy controls for hotels, motels, and dorm rooms. If, for example, like downtown Dallas, there's a Marriott, there's a bunch of hotels down there. Those are very easy to install, very, very quick turnaround and easy payout. Also, refrigeration zero energy doors is a new measure as well. And also on our website, we have created sample measure files to help you if you're going to create a project with us. It'll help walk you through the process of entering that information and all the documentation that we need. Our budget this year is $4.9 million. We had approximately $1.9 million in carryover from last year to this year. So, for example, if you create a project this year and you get towards the end of the year and you're not gonna get done with it in time, we can roll that project over. So that money is locked in for you once you've created the project and it's gone through our inspection process and everything. So don't worry about losing out if you can't complete the project this year. Just know that it'll roll over to the next year. Incentives are limited to 20% of the program budget. So, for example, 20% of 4.9 million, whatever that, do the math there. But again, always talk to us, depending on the project. We might be willing to accept it if it's bigger. Next slide. Sorry, I should have gone to that one first, but next slide. For retrofit projects, we require both a pre and a post inspection. Again, typically on lighting is most labor intensive because we have to come and look at what kind of lighting you currently have to make sure that what's being turned in is the counts are right, the wattages are right, etc. Then we also require post inspection. On new construction, we only require post inspection because obviously nothing's there to begin with, but we need to look at what you have actually installed to make sure the wattages and counts and everything add up. Because we are beholden to the state because they do audit us because all the money that we're paying out through incentives comes out of it's called the Energy Efficiency Cost Recovery Factor Fund down in Austin. They dole it out to us every year as part of our budget, and we have to be accountable for that. Next slide. As I mentioned, the state will audit us occasionally. They basically verify all the reported savings. If you do submit a project to us, you may be contacted by an evaluator to answer a survey, and they may want to do an on-site inspection. I will say that's fairly rare. It doesn't happen that often. They basically get information from us. We send it to them. They look at it, come back to us with questions, but it's not common that they actually come out, but just be aware that that might happen. It's a possibility. Next slide. Our program manuals are available at our website there in our resources section. These program manuals include the program processes and procedures. Everything we do is based on the technical reference manual that the state puts out. It's also available on our website. It has methodology and calculations and how we have to do the math and calculate savings. And it's always updated annually. And so always refer to the most recent version. Their website has every version going back like maybe 15, 20 years, but always refer to the most recent one if you're looking at a current project. Our system is set up to when you enter information, it uses the algorithm for the most current program or most current copy. So we've done that way, so it's easier for you guys to just basically enter the information, and then all the math is done in the background. Next slide. So like I mentioned earlier, one of our most popular measures is lighting, retrofits or new construction. This is the dollar value per kW and kWh that we pay per type of fixture. This is for reference only. I mentioned we have an incentive calculator, so please refer to that. There's a link on the next slide to that. The calculator takes into account many different things because it's not just like you're changing out this light to that light. It takes into account the type of building, how it's operated, the defined run hours for that building. For example, a hotel is much different than a manufacturing facility in terms of run hours. So again, the technical reference manuals algorithm takes all of it into account. And so when you're entering your information, it helps you calculate the correct dollar value. But for your reference, if you want to, what you're getting per type of fixture, this is it. But again, please use the calculator for a more accurate estimate of what any incentive you would have. Next slide. So just a couple of examples here. For a warehouse with a 400 watt metal halide, like the rocket engine looking ones, you replace that with a 130 watt LED, you'll get about $120 per fixture. For outdoor parking lot, 1,000 watt metal halide, replace it with a 250, and you get about $320 for fixture. And if you see that link there at the bottom, that's our incentive calculator. And please go to that and use that. And that will, if you fill it out correctly, it will give you a almost 100% accurate estimate of what kind of incentive you would be getting for that project. Next slide. Likewise with HVAC, there's many different technologies that we pay on. I know some places have air cooled, some places have water cooled, centrifugal, non-centrifugal. Some it's just packaged rooftop units. These are all the ones we pay on. Again, dollar per kW, dollar per kWh. But again, throw stuff into the calculator. That will give you a very good, accurate estimate of what you would have, what kind of incentive you would receive. Next slide. These are some of the other measures that we see pretty often. If you're changing out standard motors to premium efficiency, that's about what we pay on those. If you're putting VFDs on existing units, this is basically what we can pay on for those. We don't see a lot of pool pumps, but they're there. If you happen to have a pool, we can pay on that. If you're changing it out to an Energy Star pump, vending machines, we don't see a lot of those, but it's there. We do also have a program called CHEF, CHEF, Commercial High Efficiency Food Service. So if you have a kitchen facility in your location, you're changing out equipment, or actually building a new site with new equipment, as long as it falls under the Energy Star acceptability, we can pay on those. And the guy that runs that program, his name is at the very end of the program, this presentation, and you can get in touch with him and he can walk you through that since he runs that one. Next slide. So here's just an example for VFDs. If you've added a VFD to a cooling tower at a hospital, 25 horsepower, you get about $3,500. Added to a chiller at a hospital, it's 10 horsepower, $1,000. Add it to VFD on a air handler, large office, 10 horsepower, about $1,600. So fairly, and these are fairly easy projects. Like, they're very, very easy to enter compared to like a lighting. Lighting's more labor intensive because you have to like audit the entire site. We have to do pre-inspection, post-inspection. On HVAC, on pumps, motors, VFDs, we do desk inspections on those. So that we just need some good quality pictures of what you actually installed, what was there before, what was there was after. So these are actually very easy, very non-labor intensive to create and submit to us. Next slide. So regarding inspections, next slide. And we also have a PDF file we can send out to you that has actually examples of the pictures, the documentation, information we need for any kind of inspection. So if you guys are interested in that, you can contact us and we will we can send that out to you. So for pre-inspection photos for lighting, just close up of the picture of the existing lamp, so we can see the wattage profile, kind of like this picture here that's showing you where everything is and what the area looks like. If you're doing outdoor lighting, you'll be required to access the outdoor light controls during the pre-inspection because we're going to be out there during the daytime. We will need you guys to override those some way. Cover up the light sensor, flip the switch, turn off the timer, make sure that they can come on so we can actually make sure they're actually working. Because if we go over 10% of non-operational lights, your incentive will go down because we don't pay for basically deferred maintenance. We pay on retrofits. So if we come out there and see your whole parking lot is like completely burned out, we can't really pay on that. But if we turn it on, there's like one light burn out, okay, that's fine. I'll send you pictures of types of controls. So if you have occupancy sensors, switches, personal tuning, etc., just provide a picture of that. And please put all those in a single file for us so that we can actually review it pretty quickly. And also, very importantly, don't start work or remove any existing equipment until we come out and do the pre-inspection, because otherwise it's considered free ridership and we can't pay on that. Next slide. For post-inspection, again, close-ups of each unique installed fixture. So, for example, like a site that has a bunch of T8s, and they go back with a single type of LED. We just need one picture of that light and the label nameplate that we can see the actual model number. Pictures of any controls, profile of the area, and again, put them in a single file. Next slide. Similarly for HVAC, profile the unit, label of the nameplates. We can see the model number because we will need any kind of AHRI certificates or manufacturer simulations if it's a large chiller or something like that. You'll need a get those to us that show the that they're full and part load values. And again, put them all on one slide. Next slide. Same thing for the post, profile the unit, nameplate. For split units, make sure we got a picture of both the one or all three components. And sometimes there's three components: condenser, evaporator, furnace. Sometimes there's just two: condenser and evaporator. Just to make sure that we get pictures of those so we can match it up with the AHRI certificates. Next slide. For any other measures, kind of the same stuff, but just contact us on those because sometimes those are pretty unique. For motors and VFDs, that's, again, nameplates, but anything else, just talk to us. We see a lot of like doors for coolers and stuff at like 7-Elevens, racetracks, and there's some unique stuff we need on that. Just, again, it's a picture, and we can tell you what that is. So again, reach out to us. That's what we're here for. We're here to help. Next slide. So again, when we do inspections, we need the inspection contact. It can't be the customer. It needs to be the person that's doing the project. You technically can, if you are the building owner and have a maintenance staff, you guys can self-sponsor. Again, talk to us about that. We need the inspection contact to be somebody that actually knows the project, knows where things are, can help us find stuff. We'll come in the building and be like, say, for example, you're retrofitting a high rise with lights. If we walk in, and we're not gonna count every light in the building. We're gonna do a sampling, and we're gonna say we want to see this room on this floor, and we need somebody to be able to be, okay, I can get there. I know where that's at, and just be able to show us where all that whatever we're looking for is. Next slide. Oncor does not provide any tools. So if we need ladders, lifts, screwdrivers, we don't bring that. That's up to you guys to provide. And if you provide enough information up front, like the pictures we require, a lot of times we come in, we just do a count. We don't have to actually do that since we've already got the information that we needed up front. And again, I've mentioned we have a file that we can send you if you need it that shows the type of pictures, type of equipment, just the type of pictures and documentation we need. As long as you can get that to us in advance, it makes the inspection process go much quicker. Next slide. So for outdoor lighting, you got to show us that they work. Again, like I mentioned earlier, covering the photocells, bypassing timers or overriding controls. Please provide us an accurate count of non-ops, because again, once it reaches a certain level, we have to start bringing down the incentive level, and also accurately capture the pre and post conditions. So make sure you list the controls, make sure you list if it's HVAC or not, so that the algorithm in our system calculates correctly. Next slide. So in order to be actually qualified for incentives, the LEDs must be certified by either DLC or Energy Star. You can find their certificates for the different types of lights, LEDs, on the DLC Design Lights Consortium website or Energy Star website. They will have a sheet for each specific type of light, and it'll have a listed wattage. And so when you enter your project with us, you need to use the wattage that's on the DLC sheet or the Energy Star sheet, not the wattage that's on the product data sheet, because oftentimes they are different by several watts, and that can add up, and we're accountable for that to the state. If you're going back with tubes, we only pay on type C's. We do not pay on types A's, A, B's, B's, any other ones, only type C's. And we only pay $6 per fixture for those. We don't pay $6 per tube. We pay $6 per fixture, whether it's a single tube fixture or a 6-tube fixture. And also make sure you're providing the DLC or Energy Star sheets that have the exact model number of the light you're installing. A lot of times up front, it'll have, if you go to the next slide, I think it has a picture that describes this. So you see the model number here, it's the ASD WLP at 01 ADD50. And then if you look at the DLC sheet, it matches that exactly, but there's a bunch of other stuff at the very end. If you can zoom in once you get this sent to you, there's wildcard stuff that's either parentheses or brackets. As long as the main part of it matches the DLC sheet, the stuff in the brackets, this wildcard options, like we don't really care about that. It just needs to match that because we know that one's actually been tested. Next slide. So again, I mentioned it's going to be DLC or Energy Star. We do not pay on plug loads or track lighting, or LEDs used as heat lamps. If you're new construction and you're using a combination of qualified and non-qualified lights, your incentive will drop some depending on the amount of non-qualified you're putting in. We do not pay on metal halides or the sodium lights if they're a post install. And again, I mentioned the tubes. We only pay on Type Cs. Next slide. For HVAC, they have to be AHRI certified. So there's an AHRI database. If you can go look these up yourselves if you're self-sponsoring, but if you're running through a company that's, that's you're buying the units from, they may already be signed up with us. So that's a question to ask them. And they can go find the certificates for the unique units you guys are installing. But we will need the AHRIs for those specific units. It must match the model number exactly. Again, provide pre and post photos of what you had, what you're putting in. For larger units, for like chillers, water cooled DX, anything basically above about 20, 25 tons, that they won't have an AHRI certificate, but the manufacturer can run a simulation at AHRI conditions. And that's what we will use in that situation. Next slide. And that's pretty much it for CSOP. That was pretty much, that's a quick and dirty for what we do. Again, contact us. I think maybe one slide back, it's got all our contact information. We're here to help. Call us. I know that's a lot to drink through a fire hose. We're here to help. We want to help. We have the money and we want to help you out. Now I'm going to turn it over to James Costin. So we have another program called Strategic Energy Management, and it is a program that is more a custom M&B type program for commercial settings. So for things that don't fall under our standard offer program, which is basically deemed, plug stuff in a calculator, it spits out a number. This is one where we can capture more, like I mentioned, custom stuff, like compressed air leaks, compressed air replacement of a compressor, building management system optimization, stuff like that. And so I'm going to turn it over to James. They're contracted with Oncor to implement the program. They've been doing it with us for several years now, and it's been very successful. And so it could probably be pretty valuable to anyone that's on the call today. James?
Great. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so as Matt mentioned, we work with Oncor specifically to deliver this program. And it really, I guess, for all intents and purposes, it ends up being a little bit of a catch-all for energy savings projects that don't fall within the commercial standard offer program. And so we have a few thresholds, for customers that we engage with, mainly because we are engaging with customers on an ongoing basis, most typically. So, we will sign customers up for our program, and we typically meet with them once a month, and we'll track several projects, that may or may not complete this year. A lot of times we're working with customers, large commercial and industrial customers that have CapEx projects that may be spanning, 3, 4, or 5 years. So, it can be, the nice part about being a custom program is it can be whatever we need it to be, as long as we can prove energy savings are happening. So the first point there, we focus on custom energy efficient projects for the large commercial industrial customers. The incentives for those, like I said, they typically fall outside of the CSOP program, although sometimes they do dovetail, or they can kind of straddle both worlds. So we can work with you to determine which pathway best fits the project itself. For our program, the incentives range from 2 cents to 10 cents per kWh savings, depending on the type of project. So there's a little bit of variance there. As Matt mentioned earlier, with the commercial program, you can go on the calculator and plug in, whatever you're doing and get a pretty accurate estimate of what the incentive will be. For our program, because it's custom, we just basically need to qualify it as a project, and then that will determine, depending on the savings type and all that, what incentive rate it'll pay out. As I mentioned earlier, we have ongoing customer engagement. So this program is really designed to be an ongoing energy efficiency engagement with customers. So we will come out, and if needed, we can do treasure hunts. We look for savings opportunities with the customer. Sometimes, customers come to us with a laundry list, depending on what you're looking at. A lot of companies have corporate level carbon neutrality or whatever by 2050. So they've already got a laundry list of projects they're looking to do. So anyway, if not, we can always come out and help you find opportunities. Again, we do monthly meetings with our customers, so we try to track that progress, and it's really key to collect the data before and after any projects. So for us to be able to do the M&V, or measurement and verification, similar to what Matt was describing in the pre-existing and post data collection for the CSOP program, we've got to know what the status was before, what equipment was there before, how things were being operated before, have all that documented. And then once you get the project complete, we obviously do the same in the post case scenario so that we can prove the savings are legit. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we just want to continue that energy efficiency improvement. Capital and operational savings, you see there on the third main point. So we cover both capital improvements that result in energy savings and operational. So it doesn't have to be something that you necessarily go out and buy, right? You don't have to always change out equipment. If you change the operation of something and it results in energy savings, then we want to know about it, because there's a chance we can go in and determine what the savings are. You can get an incentive for it. So, just keep that in mind as you're kind of doing things and as you make changes throughout your facilities. If you change any processes that result in energy savings, you might qualify for an incentive for that. And then the last point there, simple program application. It's very, very easy to apply for our program. We need to make sure that you are qualified. And so we'll go through those quality checks to make sure that you're paying into the EECRF that Matt mentioned earlier, that energy efficiency cost recovery factor. Depending on your retail energy provider, it may just be called energy efficiency on your bill. It could be EECRF. There's different REPs call it different names, but so you can probably easily figure that out on your own bill to make sure that you're paying into that fund. That's what makes you eligible to be able to receive incentives. And then really just a commitment from you the customer, to energy efficiency. We're here to help you. We want to make sure that we're capturing any energy efficiency or any savings that you guys do have. But it is going to take just some work on your side to make sure that you're letting us know what's going on. Help us get the data, things like that. And so that's really the key things for our program is just that we're all encompassing custom energy savings for Oncor, and we definitely are looking for opportunities to help anybody find those incentives. So that's all I've got.
And let me just mention again, I don't know if we mentioned it or not, Leidos is contract with Oncor, and it is no cost to the customer. So
right.
we are paying Leidos, and there's nothing out of any customer's pockets. This is completely free to y'all in the sense that you're not paying them. It's already been paid through the EECRF. So we would love to see what you guys have to offer for the SEM program.
All right. Before we get into questions, Savannah, Corinne, James, Matt, anything else that you wanted to add before we move into questions? No? Okay. All right. Well, I wanted to thank all of you for taking the time to do both of these presentations. We really do appreciate it. I know that there's a lot of people also in the background that helped with these presentations. So I do wanted to acknowledge them as well, because I know it takes like multiple people to put these presentations and programs together. So just wanted to say we appreciate both of our members, the COG and Oncor, and for you to be able to take the time to do all this. Very much appreciated from the Dallas 2030 district and everybody else, who's a part of this as well. I'm going to go into questions. I know a couple of people sent me some questions to ask, but does anybody have any questions for our speakers or for myself? Again, before we get into that, this is being recorded, and I will be sending out the presentation and the recording link hopefully tomorrow. And if you don't get it, feel free to reach out to me, because there's a couple of people on this session, on this virtual call, that I don't know and I don't have contact information for. So any questions from anyone who attended the session today?
This is Bahman Yazdani, Energy Systems Lab. I wanted to ask either Mr. Taylor or Mr. Custon about commissioning. Are there incentives for doing retro commissioning or continuous commissioning?
Yes, that's something that we typically cover under the SEM program. And so we can work with you to determine what that looks like. It's typically, if you're doing an ongoing commissioning, then, we basically will just do an ongoing engagement with you and make sure we're capturing whatever data and before and after scenarios. I will say this, in those scenarios, we typically have a harder time collecting data because the state requires us to do 12 months pre-evaluation, 12 months of post-evaluation. So it's a pretty lengthy time frame, when we're doing those. And so, we either do a top-down regression analysis model, or, a lot of customers don't have the capability to trend that much data. So we'll end up using the utility meter as to be able to see the savings. So sometimes they can get a little bit tricky in that sense, just because data collection can be a little bit of a challenge for that time frame. But yeah, that's in general, yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
I have, a couple of folks sent me some questions. There's one for the COG and a couple for Oncor. So the treasure hunt, is that for any facility? I know, James, you were talking a little bit about the treasure hunt and how you could find things. So I guess this person's asking, is it for any facilities, including like, hospitals or gas stations or anything commercial? Are there any restrictions to that?
We have a fairly small team, and so it is reserved for customers in our program, and we will determine the need for that once they're in the program and we kind of get a projects list put together. So it is a service that we offer as part of our program, but it's not a blanket necessarily for anybody just to send us an email and say, hey, come out, can you find, do a treasure hunt for us? And so, yeah, we'll need to go through and qualify the customer first and make sure that that they're going to be a participant in the program long term.
And then second part to that question is this strategic energy management program. Like you mentioned, there was no cost to the customer, but does this come from the $4.5 million that's allocated to Oncor, or is this a different budget?
Different budget.
A different budget. Okay. And is there like a restriction per facility or the amount, or no?
Technically, yes, but we've never run up against that.
Okay.
So it's not something to worry about.
And then I have a question from somebody who's new to the Oncor program, and they are asking, is there a list of vendors? Do they have to be approved through Oncor, or can they use their own vendor for, getting these projects done?
So for our commercial standard offer program, we have what we call them service providers. So for example, FSG is one of our service providers. They just get qualified through Oncor, create an account, and they're the ones to submit the project on behalf of the customer.
Okay.
Typically, they know our process, know how to enter information. So, for example, lighting is much more labor intensive. it's better in these situations to use one of them because they know how to enter information, know what we need, and know how to audit the building, etc. Versus like, so for HVAC, if you're replacing the chiller, and again, you've got your own maintenance staff that runs the building, knows how to do everything, and you're buying the chiller, and it's a single unit. That's something we could work with you to just self-sponsor in that situation. And again, reach out to us. We've got a list of service providers. We can't recommend a specific one, but we can send you a list of, hey, these ones do a good job for us. You may already be working with them, and they're already in our system, and they can streamline the process that way.
Right. Yeah. FSG is one of our members, founding members, so they've been with us for quite some time. Yep. And then there is one question on my end from the COG. Either Savannah or Corinne can answer this. So these programs, I know you mentioned that, some of these programs are outside of the COG, but the question here is, does that individual or that building have to go through the COG to apply for it? Or is it something that they do directly or just providing the link to it? Because sometimes there are projects where, they want the cooperation of the organization. So this person's just wondering.
So the only two programs that we presented on that an entity would need to directly apply to us is the 58.6 million for the North Texas Zero Emission Vehicle Project and the North Texas Diesel Emissions Reductions Project that's due on March 13th. Everything else we're just providing for information's sake, and you can directly apply to the administrating agency, not to us.
And if they have questions about the project itself, if it's not yours, can they reach out to you to get those answered? Maybe just as a resource?
We're very familiar with the program, so we can probably answer most questions. If you have like a very, very, very question that's specific to your project, we might direct you to the administrating agency to get more detail, but at least like initial questions and directions we can probably help you with.
Awesome. Great. That's all the questions that folks sent over to me. Does anybody else have any questions that's on the call right now? I think there's a question in the chat from James. Does the COG or Oncor have any comments on future opportunities for incentivizing C&I battery storage and distribution energy management system? Sorry, smart building control systems, such as, for example, Base Power is offering for residential.
So currently Oncor is not offering any battery. We've done some studies on it, but there's nothing available there for that. So
one of the tax credits that Corinne had covered does include battery storage. I don't know, Corinne, if you wanted to touch on that again.
Yeah, I think it's the let me see. Yeah, the energy retrofits, I believe batteries are included in that. But I know that's something that's come up a lot to us from through the RISE group, concerns with the battery energy storage systems. And I know that's kind of a growing concern. So that's something that we're kind of looking at maybe doing an informational session on as that kind of grows in interest. But I believe it's the EECBP one that you can get a tax credit regards to the battery systems.
Corinne, can you keep me updated if you do anything with the battery storage? Like if you have an informational session on that, that would be very interesting for our members as well.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah, I know Susan attends our meetings all the time, so you can send the message to Susan or you can, talk to me directly. But yeah, that would be wonderful. Are there any more questions or comments? All right. Well, I wanted to thank everyone for, taking the time to hop on this session. I know that we had a very interesting weekend and beyond, and I hope that everybody stayed safe and warm over the weekend and beyond. And hopefully the stuff is going to clear up and we will be moving forward soon. So hopefully this session was informative. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm Salima Mulji. I'm the executive director for the Dallas 2030 district. And you met Savannah and Corinne, who are from the COG, and then you met Matt and James from Oncor. So I will be providing additional information tomorrow, but if you need this right away, email me. And then also, if you want to join our YouTube channel, subscribe to it. You can see all the other sessions that we've had in the past, which are multiple. And then also our Facebook and all our social media pages, including LinkedIn, because I do post all of this on there as well, and it's easier to follow. So just wanted to appreciate speakers and everyone who attended. I hope that everyone has a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Salima. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Salima.
Thanks, Salima.
Bye.
Thank you, Salima.